Welcome to episode 9 of the third season of the Simply Verified Beef podcast. The title of this episode is Trusted Training. We'll be talking about the value of VBP Plus training and other kinds of training courses for beef cattle operations. Our guests for this episode are Erika Stewart, the Saskatchewan VBP Plus Coordinator, and Karla Hicks, a producer from Saskatchewan who's taken the training with Erika and also the chair of Saskatchewan VBP Plus. This episode will cover what VBP Plus training entails and the value of continuous learning and improvement for your operation. Let's get started. So we'll start by asking both of you to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, and what you do. And maybe, Erika, we could start with you.
Hi, my name's Erika Stewart. My husband and I and our daughters ranch in Moore, Saskatchewan, so kind of in the southwest of the province. We have a commercial cow-calf operation. We grass some yearlings, and we do a little bit of direct marketing beef to consumers. And I'm also the provincial coordinator for the Verified Beef program in Saskatchewan.
Thanks, Erika. And Karla, over to you.
Hi there. I'm Karla Hicks from Bluestone Stock Farms. I ranch at Parkbig, Saskatchewan with my husband and now our kids and their spouses and our grandchildren that are coming along now. We are a commercial cow-calf operation with a small herd of purebreds to raise some bulls for ourselves. We grass some cattle, we background our calves, and then we have a branded frozen beef product, Bluestone homegrown Angus beef. So things can be a little busy out here sometimes.
Thanks, Karla and Erika, for joining us today. I want to jump next kind of right into the meat of the topic for today, which is training, and ask both of you what the value that you see is in taking training as a beef producer, whether that's VBP Plus training, a low stress handling course, or even a bookkeeping course.
To me, the value of training is super important. I'm very passionate about continuous education, and I think training is always valuable. So I think the more, from putting my producer hat on, I think the more as a producer we can learn and bring back to our operation, just the better we can be and the better we can make our own operations be. Some practices we learn, they may not fit our operation, fit our values, fit our specific climate, but I still think it's good to learn and try, even if it doesn't work out. So yeah, I guess just generally, I'm a real big believer in always learning, continuous education, moving forward, and just kind of adapting your practices.
So everything Erika just said is our thoughts as well. When it comes to the Verified Beef Production Program, we were early adopters here of that. And the reason we took that training initially was because it checked off one more box for us to help us validate that our practices and products were safe. In our frozen beef marketing, especially going to farmers markets, we were always talking to consumers that were 3 and 4 generations removed from the farm, and being able to verify that we were doing things to the best of our ability with the utmost health and safety of everybody, animals and people. That really helped us market our product. They knew that we were authentic in what we were doing. We've taken several courses outside of this, and everything we enroll in, we always think if we can come home with one thing, we've won. And there's never been a time, especially if you have an open mind to learning new things, there's never been a time that I can think of that I've taken any training where I was like, well, that didn't work out or that didn't fit in. There was always something we could take home to the ranch to make things better. That saying, this is how we've always done things, is kind of truthfully the most dangerous saying. And so we've tried to avoid that and grow or advance or use nuggets of information wherever we found them.
I like that you both mentioned, not everything that you learn at a training course has to work for you or your operation, but there's always one at least little piece of information that you can take home to benefit you and keep your operation moving forward. And our whole industry is changing. So if our operations don't change along with it, then we're not learning new things to help us adapt to those changing things. So I think it's super important as well. Along those lines, I want to ask both of you some examples of some things that you've done on your operations as a result of taking training. So things that you've learned and then gone on to implement.
Oh, wow. This is a great question. So I guess, well, the first thing would be just went to a random ladies event and it was on bookkeeping. And I had the lights come on for me, which totally shifted how I approached our bookkeeping and our software. And well, the old saying, who you surround yourself with is kind of how you'll end up doing things. And I lined up a set of friends that were using Egg Expert and had all these tricks and little quick tips that I could use at home. And that sped up the efficiency of doing books and things. So that's like the first thing that I can think of. The other thing is I retook our verified beef production training not very long ago, and the records had changed from when I had taken the training, shockingly, in like the 1990s. Like, imagine that, it might change. And that totally did a 362 on how I was managing our record keeping at home, especially out in the field for the guys, like for pasture treating, and for myself, for how we were recording information and making that more efficient and getting the details back to where it mattered. So there's just a couple of things I can think of.
Yeah, I like that you point out, the importance of everybody that's there at the training too. You learn things from other people or neighbors as well. There's informal training from your peers too, and not always just an instructor, but sometimes kind of opening the mindset to going to a training kind of gets those ideas flowing. So that's important too. Erica, any examples from your farm?
Yeah, so I feel this question is, yeah, a great question, especially right now. We're really doing kind of a 360 on our practices here on our ranch. So we've taken a bunch of training, so mainly grazing. So that's something that we're really trying to improve on. We most of our land is like native rangeland, so we just have a little bit of tame grass, but we're trying to do like amp grazing on that tame grass, so adaptive multi-paddock grazing. It's been so dry for 7 years here that it's just the drought's been horrible. So we're just trying to find ways, like kind of when Karla mentioned, just to sit back and kind of say this is the way we've always done it is dangerous. We think that too. And that's been a little bit how it was. Like, this is how we, like, we've always grazed, we've always managed things, but it's not working, and it's really not working in a drought. So we've done a ton of learning on like soil health, grazing management, this amp grazing, and yeah, done a bunch of projects lately to try to implement that. We actually went to a really cool grazing workshop this summer in Montana with Alejandro Correro, who ranches in the Mexican desert. And so we just think that if he can, make that work, then surely we can graze cows and be better grazers and, actually get more grass growing on our ranch. So that's been a really exciting adventure. And I took ranching for profit this last winter, and that's been kind of a game changer too. There was so much learning from that. Even just like looking at our ranch more of a business and really trying to implement those things. And Kyle and I are really trying to make it a goal of actually having like business meetings to like work on the business, not just a quick, thing to look at the numbers with your accountant, but making that part of our goals and what we really strive to do. And then, like Karla said, so those are examples of like pretty formal learnings, but you can go to just a meeting with people, right? And you're visiting and chatting with people. And I love how Karla said that if you have an open mind, you can learn pretty much anywhere.
Yeah, I like your drought example quite a bit because for me, I think that's what resonates about training is that, we can have systems or practices that are working really well as long as the conditions are a certain way. But then all of a sudden we get thrown a curveball and we have to figure out how to adapt. And if you don't have an opportunity to train or learn from somebody else, it's pretty hard to kind of pull those ideas and ways to adapt out of nowhere. So yeah, learning from somebody that ranches in the Mexican desert can probably help a whole great deal with drought. And why not use somebody else's knowledge and years of experience to keep improving at home too. Erica, I want to dive a little bit more into the VBP Plus training specifically. And obviously, you as the coordinator in Saskatchewan deliver that training. So I'm curious if you can describe what the VBP Plus training covers and what the format is like.
Sure. Yeah. So the VBP Plus training consists of four main pillars, as I like to think about it. So food safety, animal care, environmental stewardship, and biosecurity. And there's obviously subcategories within those, but those are kind of the main parts of the training. And so producers can take the training online anytime, that's always available. And then depending on your province, there's options for in-person workshops as well. So if that's something of interest to producers, like taking it in person in a workshop setting, you can reach out to your respective provincial coordinators. In Saskatchewan, though, I can, go into a little bit more detail about that. So that's something I'm quite busy with, going around the province and putting on these workshops to deliver that training in person. So typically I try to go to a place that, there's interest. So if a producer is called and wants a training in their area, I work with them and organize that. The training would take about 3 hours to go through, and then we can, I deliver the whole training, we can ask questions, and sometimes we'll have other guest speakers come in too for kind of additional learning opportunities. And with the verified beef training, there would be a big emphasis on food safety, which I think is really important as, obviously the provincial coordinator of the program, but also as a producer. Because as ranchers, sometimes I think we think of ourselves as, a rancher because we like working with animals or like working outside, but really at the end of the day, we're producing food for people to eat. And the program wants to make sure we're doing that in the most responsible way possible, which people are, but sometimes it's good little reminders of, that is our end product to feed people. And so sometimes people may think, the records that we require might be a bit of a pain, or, I don't want to start doing that. But I think I try to weave that purpose of, food safety throughout the presentation. And hopefully that resonates a little bit more. So yes, we're asking for records, but I think they're for a really good reason for your operation, but also the Canadian beef industry as a whole.
Thanks, Erika. I like that you position that in kind of the bigger food system. That's something that, sometimes it's hard for us to think of when we're separated from the people that are eating our protein as much as they might be separated from the farm too. But it's important to remember. As a quick follow-up on that, I just want to ask, is the VBP Plus training only meant for people that want to get certified, or is there value in it for folks that maybe aren't thinking of certification too?
Yeah, that's a great question, Emma. There's value in it for both. You definitely can take the training and just take the training and it can end there. You don't have to pursue certification just because you've taken the training. And that's one of the things I appreciate about the VBP Plus program is it's completely voluntary. So producers can take the training and get the benefits out of the training, but choose, for their own reasons not to pursue certification, and that's fine. There's still value in the training.
Thanks, Erika. And yeah, especially in Saskatchewan, I know you guys have got incentives for both training and certification. So a little extra value in your province specifically for that too.
Yes, absolutely.
Karla, I want to jump to you next. You mentioned you retook the VBP Plus training fairly recently. And I just want to ask what the training was like for you and what some of your key takeaways were. I know you mentioned record keeping, but any other kind of major takeaways from retaking the training?
The biggest one was the change with the biosecurity portion of it. And it's not that we hadn't considered biosecurity on our ranch, because we get school groups or even your neighbor down the road stopping in, especially at calving time if you have some purebred calves that they want to take a look at or whatever. But I just hadn't looked at it from that, I guess, global standpoint. And actually, a couple of years ago, we had a bit of an outbreak in some calves we had weaned. And I don't know if 15 years ago, if we would have had that outbreak, if I'd have thought about it the same with people coming around, but we had a neighbor kid working for us. And I was insistent on him having a specific pair of boots for only here. And they stayed here because he had cattle at home as well. And it was really seeing the biosecurity portion of the VBP training that opened my eyes to that and how these diseases can be spread, and so innocently too. So that was one big takeaway. I'm probably a bad person to ask about it because none of it was overwhelming to me. None of the course was overwhelming. The records aren't overwhelming because we were already doing all of that. It was more of a pat on the back that, yes, you're on the right track. And I wish more people would take the training because I think that they feel like they're going to be judged or they're subpar or whatever. And they probably are not. Like if you even just take it down to the base level of driving around, checking cows calving with your calf record book, you're there, you're doing that. And you're keeping track of what calf is sick. When did you treat it? What did you treat it with? Because it costs money to overtreat. And so I wish that I could get that message across better to folks. That's kind of one of the things that I really press on.
That's great to hear that, the program is based around what's practical for folks to already be doing. And,
Mhm.
there's always new things to learn, but that it's also, reassurance of, yeah, these are the practices that I have in place, but maybe why am I doing them and why are they so important too? I think another thing that resonates for me here is that, I mean, if you're taking the online training, that's one thing, but in-person training with Erica, for example, it's a producer talking to another producer. It's kind of like visiting with your neighbor to learn about maybe something different that they're doing that you could try. So it really is producer led and focused. It's not somebody standing there telling you, like you said, Karla, what you should be doing different or how you need to change. So I think that's really important to hear. Is it's that neighborly kind of advice type of feel to it. Want to jump next into a question for both of you and ask, again, another question maybe specific to the VBP Plus training, and ask for some examples of things that you learned in the VBP Plus training that helped make your farm or ranch more efficient. So, Carla, I know you mentioned a couple there in terms of, not over treating and keeping track of what you're treating to help save some costs there. But anything else to add there?
I think the managers of a lot of operations have all of the information tucked away inside their brains. And like, I'll think about my husband in this case. He knows exactly what set of cattle he wants moved, where, and when. And it's drives him crazy if nobody else can see this. Like, you can see how much grass is left. You can see what paddock they need to be moved to next. You can see what cattle need to be treated for this disease or whatever. And he has the ability to tuck that away inside his brain. But the rest of us don't have the ability, and I've learned this after 30 years, to read his mind or see the records in his brain. And so VBP for me has made it so much simpler to provide the documents or the tools or the means or the ways to share that information and record it, so we aren't duplicating, so we're not doubling up, so that we're not seeing that 33B out there has pneumonia and got X drug today, and then he goes back 2 days later and runs that same calf in and gives it again, or something else, in total duplication. And I think that's one of the tools that Verified Beef has given us, and it's made us more efficient. So I guess the key takeaway would be communication. Verified Beef, in its practical way, has provided a better tool for communicating, which makes things more efficient.
I really like how you put that. I think most farmers and ranchers, including myself, could relate to trying to read a family member or other person on the farm's mind, and it's not easy to do. So I like that, yeah, how you put that. It's facilitating communication and everybody, knowing the plan and how to get it done. Erica, any examples of things you've implemented from VBP Plus training?
Yeah, for sure. So I won't spend too much time on my one example of biosecurity because Karla did a great job of already explaining that. But I just want to touch on that because I think that's something that we kind of don't maybe focus on that much in the beef industry that can be really important. So just those preventative steps to prevent a disease outbreak can be really important. Just like Karla mentioned, thinking about our boots, or just making sure we don't wear our same boots if we're dropping a few cull cows off at the auction mart, right? Or going over to help a neighbor. So just little things that can make a big difference. Records, again, for us were huge when we started this program. And one of the things I like to say in the trainings too is you can't manage what you don't measure. So kind of going back to when it's in somebody's brain, and that's exactly how it was for us with my dad. He knew all the cows, he had those things in his head. But when I came to work for him, like, I didn't have all that in my head. And then too, some of those things are anecdotal, right? Or you can forget things. Everybody's busy and nobody's perfect. So to have those written down to make real concrete kind of business decisions has been really helpful. I also think the little tips with the verified beef training too, like about handling vaccine, whether that's, keeping it cool, or, when you're picking it up from the vet clinic, but also when we're using it. I mean, these products aren't cheap. So if we can try to provide some information about, the best or the best methods to use it to get the most out of that vaccine, I think is really helpful. So, just are using a cooler now, making sure we're changing needles frequently, and anybody that's helping, you kind of go over that protocol with them, say on branding day, if you have somebody helping, right? Because at the end of the day, in my opinion, that's like the most important part of days like that, are making sure those cattle get those vaccinations.
Let's jump maybe back. I know you guys have mentioned lots of different kinds of training that you've taken. Um, we've talked bookkeeping, grazing courses, ranching for profit, but any other types of training that you want to mention that you've taken?
I mean, there's been like webinars, I guess, and podcasts. Those would be informal, but they're still good information. I feel I've given most of my formal training examples, and field days, right? Those are great to like actually see boots on the ground, what's happening. So I know in Saskatchewan, like there's some soil field days, there's like Stock Growers Foundation has field days. So yeah, I think just definitely keep as a producer, just keep watch for things that are going on in your area and with your local associations or, grazing associations. There's lots of those that have great days. And if you can't make it to things, I mean, we're all so busy, right? But podcasts and webinars are great options. BCRC had just started their own podcast, which has great information, and they're nice and short kind of chunks of time. They also have free webinars. So yeah, there's those that can provide a lot of information as well.
Yeah, great example. I think we always think of training as like the in-person formal courses, but it's all of those things as well too. Erika, I want to jump back to you next. And you mentioned that you bring in some other speakers to go with the VBP Plus training, or some other types of kind of sessions or courses in with the training sessions. And I'm wondering if you can talk about some of the sessions that you've had and how producers have responded to those.
Yeah, for sure, Emma. So I think to me, this is huge. If a producer has decided to, give up some time, which is very precious, like everybody's very busy, time is the most precious commodity, right? And come into a classroom session, I want it to be as beneficial as possible for them. So that's really important to me. So throughout the training, I try to provide other tidbits of information, especially from BCRC. So that's the Beef Cattle Research Council. So they do research in Canada for the Canadian beef industry, and they do a ton of great extension work too. So they don't just do the research and keep it, kind of formal high level. They do a great job of making it so they're easy tidbits for us as producers to try to implement, and helpful decision-making tools as well. So some of the things I try to share in the training. So for example, in the environmental stewardship portion of the training, we're talking about, riparian areas and grazing, what we can do there. And BCRC has calculators. So there's a calculator for water development, right? So if we're thinking, we have dugouts, that's great. That's how my cows are drinking, which is fine if that's what works for you. But there is good research to show that, you do get a better rate of gain if cattle are drinking fresh water. So, you've heard this, but you're not sure if you can put the money out to drill a well or dig a well and buy a trough when, what you have is working. So they have these calculators so you can input data from what you find. So what the trough you've looked at, the quote you've gotten for that, the quote you've gotten from a well driller or whatever it may be, you can implement those real numbers to your operation. And then it'll give you kind of a return on investment, or, what that's going to cost you, what your improved rate of gain could be. So it just helps make those like real world decisions. They've got another great kind of video on body condition scoring that I like to share the video. And then they also have a tool where you can like slide this lever depending on like the animal's body condition score. And then on the other side, it'll automatically change your conception at preg rate, your percentage of cattle showing estrus after 30 days post-calving, 60. So I think things like that are so helpful because you don't just hear the theory, you can like see it with your own eyes and how drastically it can change, right? And so when you have to go make those decisions in, say, for an example, a drought year and you didn't grow very much feed, that you either need to sell cattle or buy feed instead of trying to chance it, maybe feed a little bit less and get by, because that's going to have really negative consequences, for the next year, which may think you're saving money this year, but you're not when more cows are open or most of your calves are born third cycle, right? It just really, really highlights the decisions that you make. Another great one that producers seem to really appreciate is the BCRC's the CAF 911. So they've got different videos and posters for, if you need to like tube a calf that's sick, like a dehydration checklist. And the other one that's a great video is the recovery position. We've used this on our operation. So, if you have a cow that's having like struggling during calving and you need to pull it and that calf comes out and, things aren't looking good, it's talking about how to position them. And it really helps provide the most like space for those lungs to expand and breathe. So all those things I think are really helpful, just little tidbits of information you can take back and that are practical to use on your operation. The other one I like to share is the Guardians of the Grassland video, because to me, sometimes it's, challenging as a producer to hear the negative, news stories about our industry or, how cattle are affecting climate change and all the things when we know cattle do so much good for the environment. And I think that Guardians of the Grassland film is just so well done that I want, to share it with as many people as we can and as with producers, so they can feel armed with some good information to share if they get into a conversation with somebody about the environment and cows, right? They can explain that, our native prairie is actually one of the fastest disappearing ecosystems, and having cows on that land and being managed properly is a huge benefit to that ecosystem and the species that live there. So yeah, those are some of the things I like to share. And like you mentioned, I also like to try to partner with other organizations if possible, again, just to provide a bit more opportunity for learning, if people are already coming to the training. So the Saskatchewan Ministry of Agriculture is a great supporter of VBP. So they usually come and talk about some of their programs. So they have livestock and feed extension specialists around the province, and there's a free water testing program. So usually they'll talk about that. They can also do like rations for producers. So you can send feed tests in and they can help build you a winter ration. So I think those things are important to share too, just so all our producers know what's available to them. I partner with Lee Sinclair, who works with Merck a lot. He does a great low stress cattle handling presentation. And then depending on where our workshop is, sometimes we even get to do like live demonstrations. So if we have some cattle to work, we can do the classroom theory and then actually go try to work some cattle and use these techniques he's taught us. And recently I've partnered with Master Feeds as well, which is great. So they have information on some of the, products they might carry that might be helpful, but also we've had presentations from some of their nutritionists also when they come and partner on a workshop for us. So just, trying to provide as much information as we can for producers.
Thanks, Erika. I know I took the training with you back in the day as a U of S student, and I really enjoyed how much information got packed into the day to really make it, worth the time, worth the effort to get out there. And you learn a whole lot, but it also kind of all fits together. And you do such a great job of making those pieces fit and feel all relevant to the same big picture. So it's really a lot of added value for the producer that is in attendance. Karla, we've talked a little bit about, making sure that the training day is of value to a producer. And I'm curious to hear what motivates you to go to a training session, whether it's cost, location, incentives that come with the training, usefulness. What are some of those things that really make you consider going to a course or listening into a webinar?
Well, first would be location and time of year for sure. How many fires we have burning and if we can get away. And then the information that's being given, like there's some topics that you just should go in person, especially so that you can really pick the brains of the people who are presenting the information. And like what Erika just said, how she packs all that information into a verified beef training day is amazing and door opening. So location, time, and show me a training day that's not going to be useful or beneficial in some way. That it's just not out there if you're open to learning new things.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that you mentioned the value of in-person training because I think, post COVID and all of that, we found it hard sometimes to get people back to in-person events. We've switched to a lot of virtual methods, but sometimes it's best just to have a date in the calendar where you've committed to going and you're gonna learn. You've committed to doing that, and there's nothing else that can kind of take up that time. So I think there's still a lot of value in that format, and to your point, it's always good to pick other people's brains as well. So
Yeah, for sure.
That's hard to replace. Yeah.
Something that comes to mind for me from the COVID days is the Saskatchewan Cattle Feeders Association puts on Feedlot School. which is a fantastic learning opportunity. And anyone who can go absolutely needs to go. The thing that I found from COVID is they started doing feedlot tours that were videoed. And I just love that. Like some of them I've rewatched 5 or 6 times, just seeing other people's or other feedlot operations, how they operate, seeing them actually day to day feeding cattle, their processing crews at work. I just love that part. Now we have to go back to feedlot school in person. But I think as negative of a time as COVID was for us, I think there was some value in how it improved what we could see from home and how we could use our time to look at those things.
Yeah, interesting. There's a real kind of happy medium there of getting to use some resources and follow up with them after even an in-person training and remember little things that you picked up or go back and look at it or, look for small pieces of information. So there's benefit to both for sure. I want to jump next into, again, a question for both of you. We've talked about a lot of different training opportunities, but if producers are looking for those opportunities to learn more, where can they find courses and other training opportunities?
I would say just keep involved. Like usually your, provincial cattle association will share training opportunities, verified beef, like social media is huge, right? It's free, it's easy for organizations like Verified Beef for your provincial cattle associations to share information. So I'd say as much as you can follow on social media. And social media is great, but there is benefit in other advertising material. So I know in Saskatchewan Cattlemen's Association went back to just kind of a newsprint paper, which is actually great. I quite enjoy reading stuff in print. So yeah, I think there's tons of opportunities. You just have to be open and looking for them. So social media, sign up for things. Lots of times they have email lists, right? And they send you that right to your inbox so you can look at it. Just kind of keep your eyes open for things because there's tons of things going on always.
I would just jump on also what Erika said there. We have the Saskatchewan Stock Growers Association sending out a magazine to membership. Saskatchewan Cattle Feeders Association keeps their members up to date on things that are going on. And then the Canadian Cattle Association, you'll get a whole world of information there as well. For as low as like $100 membership to any of the stock growers or the cattle feeders, that kind of opens a huge doorway as well for getting more information delivered right to your mailbox or your inbox. And then after that, it seems like doors just open. All you do is, even Googling Canada beef, Saskatchewan beef opens up so many avenues with more information. And then having a good vet client relationship, veterinary offices are the best for learning what's going on. And oftentimes they're putting on things themselves. We all know the world of drugs and meds and vaccinations changes daily, it feels like. And so they're always trying to get better information out. And our salesmen are doing an excellent job, especially at events like Agrivision or Ag in Motion, of reaching out to producers and making sure that they're doing this and this, and hey, you should come out and see this. And then you develop these friendships with them. And then the communication just continues from there.
Yeah, to speak to Erika's point about print too, I've noticed that, sometimes I just kind of glaze over and don't pay attention when I'm walking out the door in UFA here, but a farm supply store across the country. But they often have bulletin boards with a lot of kind of more local events that are really close to your area and easy to get to. The auction mart has some sometimes. The vet clinic for sure, like you said, Karla, or even I've seen them in our local gas station. So just kind of keeping your eyes peeled, like you've both said, but both on social media and physically around town are great places to find things for sure. Last couple questions here. I just want to ask, if either of you have an idea on who an operation should send to attend training. Is it just for owners and managers to take, or who can benefit from taking different kinds of training?
Everybody, every single person needs to go. Every single person in your operation needs to understand that even though that's a cow standing in the pasture or a steer standing at the feed trough, that's our food chain. And it's us and our reputation that's on the line. And by doing it right, all we do is make the job easier, and we make ourselves look that much better. And so when everybody in the operation takes ownership of their job and the role they play in the Canadian beef industry, that's when we've succeeded. So every single person needs to take training and benefits from the training.
I just would like to echo that. I think everyone should take it too. I mean, for verified beef, we do only require one person per operation, but then that one person is required to be able to relay the requirements of the VBP Plus program to everybody that's, working on that operation. But I think if more people have it, it's just as super beneficial. Then there's an understanding of the overall picture that, maybe why we're doing records instead of being like, oh, I don't have time, it's not that important. Hopefully, if they take the training, they see the value and the importance from, an overall food safety system. So why that record's important. So I just think, again, like Karla said, the more training, the better. Then we can all kind of get on the same page. And I think it helps kind of the culture of your operation too, if everybody understands and values the same things and understands why it's important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I've actually heard lots of producers that are hiring on staff or employees say that it's a really great onboarding tool. So rather than having to spend a whole bunch of time themselves, although obviously they do some training specific to their operation, they just have their new folks joining the operation, take the VBP Plus training, and it's really kind of a good intro to how they do things and how they expect things to be done on their place. So saves them some time that way too. Last question for both of you is just if you have any last words of advice for producers on the topic of training.
Yeah, I would just say that, like we talked about before, just keep your eyes and ears open. There's always opportunity and there's always something to learn, no matter, what type of training you attend or go to. And then for the verified beef training specifically, I would like to say that, Karla kind of mentioned it. It's not there to say, you're doing a good job, you're not, and kind of, you need to do this to be part of the verified beef program. Really, at the end of the day, I like to think about the VBP Plus training and program as kind of a continuous education program for the beef industry. So if we were in any other occupation, right, you would have continuous education days for that particular job. So in my mind, this is that for the Canadian beef industry. So if you can take the training, learn a few things, go home and implement it to make your operation better, that's awesome. But also, if we can all pick, say, 2 things, improve on that, that makes the Canadian beef industry as a whole better too. So yeah, it's not about where we're starting, because we're all going to come into this at different points, and that's great. If we can have a goal is to just, improve a few things on our operation, then that's going to be really impactful.
Thank you both so much for joining the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting us to be on, Emma. This was really fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Simply Verified Beef podcast. Be sure to follow us at Simply Verified Beef on Facebook and Instagram.